When you're thinking about creating a YouTube ad, you obviously need to think about the actual creative for that ad and how long that YouTube ad should be. Now, this is not a simple answer to a question because it's not a one size fits all. You can't just say this is the right length for the YouTube ad. Lots of people do different lengths for YouTube ads, and it depends on what sort of ad you are wanting as well. So obviously you can run 6-second ads, you can run 30-second ads, but at S.Media we generally tend to advise a 3-minute sort of mark for a YouTube ad. And this is because we propose a YouTube first strategy. So that a YouTube first strategy essentially means that we put YouTube at the top of the marketing strategy and then other things follow. So we are not placing YouTube against something else. We're saying that YouTube works really well to attract that brand awareness, to attract that audience. And then for the people that don't convert from the YouTube audience, you can target them on different platforms such as Facebook or potentially Instagram if that works with your audience as well. So by using a 3-minute mark for your YouTube ad, you are then able to see perfectly how many people watched 50% of the YouTube ad and 75%, and giving 3 minutes allows for that percentage better. So if you have a certain amount of people that have watched 75% of that YouTube ad, you are then better able to target them on other platforms and remarket to them. So that is why we would generally tend to say film or create a YouTube ad that is about 3 minutes in length.
So the makings of a YouTube ad. Now obviously the most important thing about that is having a YouTube ad and filming it. Now before the pandemic you could have just hired an agency to do it, but now that's a little bit more difficult given the restrictions. But filming a YouTube advert from home doesn't have to be difficult, and it can actually be a lot more affordable. So the first thing you want to think about when filming your own YouTube advert is what you're filming on. Now you might think a big expensive camera might be the only way to do it, but that's not the case. You can even film it on your phone and still get a great advert. Some other things that you want to think about are lighting, audio, and general equipment. So for audio, you can buy really cheap mics on Amazon and eBay, and that'll just make a massive difference to the audio in your adverts. Secondly, you want to think about lighting. So you might think, oh, studio lighting, professional lighting. You don't always need that. You can even just use a really big window to get a lot of natural light in, and that'll make a whole load of difference to your adverts. The last thing you want to think about is equipment, specifically tripods. So if you want to have a steady video, then you might want to think about purchasing a tripod to hold your camera or your phone on.
One of the things that we see as a YouTube specialist agency is a lot of clients being inconsistent, and they'll bang stuff up on YouTube, they'll do a load of really good content or not so good content, they'll keep changing the way it looks, they'll keep changing the way it feels, they'll do something slightly different on Facebook, they'll do something different over there, they'll do a door drop that's that, or whatever it may be. So there can be a lot of inconsistencies across different channels, which is a real problem because then you're not building a brand, you're not building a visual or tonal kind of representation of what you're really about. And it's like building a personality. People kind of are attracted to different types of personalities. So, make sure that you're consistent across different channels, but even on YouTube, when producing YouTube content, it's really easy to flit around because you think you're getting bored, but people don't see it like you do. They don't see the content as much. And you need to be consistent. You need to be consistent in your tone, in your personality, in your colours, in your typefaces. Try not to hop around too much. And sometimes, yes, you have to ring the changes. That happens. All brands go through a little bit of a rejig eventually, but often it's quite subtle changes that you don't see, like a Shell logo over many, many years. It changes radically, but nobody really notices the subtle changes. So I think you need to just be really clear about what your objectives are, really, who your customers are, who you're trying to target, what you're trying to communicate, and what you want the outcome for them to be. And then be consistent. Don't start being quite morbid and down, and then suddenly going, hey, because you're kind of confusing the messages that you're putting out there. So it's a classic marketing thing. Be consistent. Don't get bored of it. Stick with it, but just make sure it's based on what you think people like or what you're wanting your customers to feel. So yeah, I just encourage consistency all the time.
A classic trope of advertising is hooking the viewer. Now, hooking your audience is, in a sense, connecting with them. It's emotionally being invested in terms of what they need and what they want. And with a lot of traditional advertising mediums, this is really lost, and the journey is really broken down, as you can only really get a surface level approach to connecting with your audience. But on YouTube, this is so different. It's such a more of an emotional platform where you can have a two-way conversation with your audience, and also you can deliver really incisive and descriptive content, which is going to make your audience really sort of be receptive to what you're giving them. So crafting a YouTube hook is so necessary in order to make the most of your YouTube ad strategy. What I'd suggest is taking a really strong call to action, having a really strong purpose for your audience to take along with them, of this is what they need to do, and you need to empower them to take that action. And that's the purpose of what I think your hook should be. It should really address who they are, what their values are, what they stand for, and twofold to that, you should give them some action that is something that in their minds they're thinking, this is something that I want to take forward, this is something that I can get behind, and it's going to be something that's going to drive them towards your brand or action that your site will be giving them. And with YouTube, this has never been easier.